Welcome to Complete Car and welcome back to Munich, because now it's time to take a look at the BMW M5 Touring. Only the third touring estate version of the BMW M5 made in the model's 40-year history. There's this, there's the famous E34 from the late 80s, and there's the E60 from the early 2000s. BMW has clearly decided that the M3 Touring, introduced recently, was a big enough success to start bringing estates back into the M fold in a big way. And that's certainly what we've got here. Mechanically, under the skin, this is exactly the same as the M5 Saloon we drove recently. So you've got a colossal 585 horsepower V8 up the front. Now, if that sounds like less power than in previous M5s, well, you're right. That's because this car is now a plug-in hybrid, like the Saloon. So the engine has a little bit less power, but that's more than compensated for by the 197 horsepower electric motor that's sandwiched into the gearbox. Combined, they offer 727 horsepower and a frankly ridiculous 1,000 Newton meters of torque. Thank God this car has X-Drive four-wheel drive, otherwise you'd just be melting these back tyres all day long. But we are staying around the back of the car because obviously this is the business end. This is where this differs from the Saloon. You can see the styling is subtly different. This character line that starts in the door continues back much further. It kind of reduces the visual weight of this rear three-quarter panel a little bit. I mean, it's a, you've got this big bulging wheel arch and these massive wheels and the big spoiler here, but it is still quite a subtle looking car, even in this wonderful Isle of Man green paintwork. It's still handsome. It's still something that will pass underneath most people's radars. Only the true car nuts will spot what this is. But there is a limitation. Yes, it's wonderful that BMW has made a new M5 Touring, and yes, it's wonderful that we have another high-performance estate on the market, because we love our estate cars and we love our high-performance estate cars. But there is something that we need to note in the boot. So what is that limitation? Well, it's in here. You do get an electric boot lid as standard, which is nice, and the whole boot area is really nice and plush. And you get a little bit of underfloor storage as well, so you can pack away the luggage load cover if you want to fold these seats flat and get the full loading capacity. But loading capacity is actually the limitation we're talking about, because this boot up to the luggage cover has a capacity of 500 litres. That's not bad, but it's about 70 litres less than you get in the standard 5 Series Touring and the electric i5 Touring. Obviously, BMW has had to make compromises to fit in all of the M5's mechanical package, the battery, the M differential that sits between the rear wheels, all of that sort of stuff. It has forced a bit of compromise. Now, it's still a really practical car by anybody's standards, but just a nigglingly small amount less practical than it might have been. And while we're talking about that, there is one other issue, which is, if I just close the boot lid, in its 40-year history, the 5 Series Touring has always had an opening rear window separate to the rest of the boot. Really, really handy little function that meant you could just flip the glass up and put in or take out small and light items. And unfortunately, none of the current 5 Series Touring models have that. The M5 doesn't have it either, and it's just a bit of a shame that it's been dropped. We do need to take a quick look at the back seats, though, just to see if they're any more spacious than they are in the Saloon. So as you can see, the back of the M5 Touring isn't actually any different to that of the M5 Saloon. It's basically the same size, but that's not a bad thing. Look, I've got plenty of legroom. That front seat is set reasonably far back. Plenty of headroom. There's a nice glass roof available, which does let a lot of extra light into the back of the car. That's very helpful. You get a bit more light from this extra rear window here too. So it's a slightly nicer place to spend time in than the back seat of the Saloon. It feels a bit less dark, it feels a little bit more airy, and it's certainly very, very comfortable. You don't feel like the poor relation sitting back here, because you've got these fabulous leather seats, you've got your own temperature and heated seat controls. It's really nicely specified. But I think it's enough time spent now in the boot and the back seat. It's time to get into that seat and see what the M5 Touring is like to drive. So what's the M5 Touring like to drive? Well, I mean, you're not going to be staggeringly surprised if I tell you it's quite like the M5 Saloon, are you? I mean, that has been the tradition of the 5 Series Touring down through the years, is that it drives very much like the Saloon. That is the whole point. You get the extra practicality, but you don't get the penalty of it being soggy or unpleasant from behind the wheel. That said, it does feel a little bit softer than the Saloon. Now, I have to qualify that. I was talking to one of the BMW engineers last night, and we were chatting about what changes had been made to the car, and he did say that the rear suspension has been altered slightly in order to compensate for the slightly higher weight of the car and for the weight distribution. And I'm not sure, is the car genuinely that much softer, or am I just have I just got that idea in my head and now I think it? But yeah, from how it feels right now behind the wheel, I do think it's a little bit softer, which is not to its detriment. Actually, if anything, it's even better, because you feel the car move slightly more as you turn into and come out of a corner, and it feels then like it's talking to you a little bit more. It kind of gives you that bit of resistance and feedback. It's just really, really phenomenally good to drive. Again, for a big chunky car, and we're over the 2.5 ton mark here, and it is a physically imposing big vehicle as well. It doesn't feel it from behind the wheel. The steering is so good, so feelsome, so accurate, that you just, you don't mind taking it on narrow, twisty roads like this. In fact, you absolutely relish it. If you'd asked me at 9 o'clock this morning, would I have thought that 727 horsepower was a bit excessive for a car, I'd have said yes. Now, I'm not so sure. I'm starting to think it might actually be entirely appropriate and prudent to have that much power on board, because this is not a car that feels overwhelmed by its power output. Yes, it's stupidly quick, and yes, if you're using launch control and trying to match that 3.6 second 0 to 100 kilometer an hour time, you will feel like you're about to lose your lunch, and you will feel like your stomach is trying to wrap itself around your spinal cord. But to be honest, as with very high performance electric vehicles, it's not something you're going to be doing an awful lot of. What you will appreciate is how well this thing gathers speed in gear. Again, it has that phenomenal 80 to 120 kilometer an hour performance, and just when you need a burst of speed, my God, it's there. It makes overtaking maneuvers so much safer. It makes merging with fast-flowing autobahns so much safer. And obviously, it feels like a whole heap of fun to just do and enjoy yourself behind the wheel. Again, as with the saloon, it's also very comfortable, very refined. Wind noise doesn't really pick up until you're well over 200 kilometers an hour. It's okay, we were on an autobahn, it was nice and legal. It's a phenomenal all-rounder. And again, the fact that it is so much cheaper than it used to be in the Irish market, thanks to the fact that it's a PHEV, thanks to the fact that the taxation system has given it that massive price haircut, it's just a very hard car to argue with. I mean, it's cheaper than the M3. Why wouldn't you have this instead? You'll even pay cheap tax on it because it's a plug-in hybrid. The range on the battery, on the 18.6 kilowatt hour battery, is slightly lower here than it is in the saloon. It's down by about 1 or 2 kilometers. Not enough to really make a massive difference. And again, realistic range is going to be around 45 to 50 kilometers really. Again, that's enough for most people's commutes. If anyone who buys an M5 actually cares enough about it to want to plug it in and use it as an electric car, given the fantastic crackling noises that come off that mighty V8 and out of those 4 exhaust pipes, I'm not so sure anyone would. It is still a controversial car. It is big, it's profligate, it's heavy, it's ridiculously heavy, and it's very, very fast. Antisocially so, you might say. But when you're actually sitting here behind the wheel, even on these ridiculous red leather seats, it actually just all feels really, really good. Well, that's the BMW M5 Touring. Enough power, poise and precision to take a Ferrari to the cleaners, but space for the kids and the dog. It's kind of a hard combination to beat, really, isn't it? If you've enjoyed this video, please do like and subscribe to the Complete Car YouTube channel, and don't forget to head over to CompleteCar.ie for our reviews of the M5, the M5 Touring, and pretty much every other car on sale on the market right now. Thanks for watching.